We are told in 1,000 different ways that love is an act of giving, a sacred consensus, a harmony of two souls who bend and weave to accommodate one another. And what a beautiful, fragile lie that is. A lie whispered by poets who died penniless and saints who bled for a silent God. The truth, the one that festers in the gut on a humid August night when the storm won't break, is far more grotesque. Love, in its most primal, untamed form, is not a negotiation. It is a collision of gravities. Think of it. A man who says yes to every demand, every whim, every unspoken expectation. What is he? He is weightless. He has no center of his own. He is a satellite, caught in her orbit, his trajectory dictated entirely by her mass. He offers no resistance, no friction. He is convenient. He is pleasant. He is forgettable. He is a ghost at his own feast. His presence is defined only by the space he vacates, the needs he fulfills. He is an absence, painted over with the thin veneer of agreeability. And she will, for a time, enjoy this. It is, after all, effortless. Like owning a beautiful programmable machine. But no woman, not truly, can love a machine. She may appreciate it, she may depend on it, but the moment its gears grind a little too loudly or a more efficient model appears, she will feel nothing as she discards it. Because you cannot love that which has no sovereign territory, no kingdom of its own soul that you are forbidden to enter. Now, imagine a different man. Imagine he stands still. Imagine she comes to him with a demand, not a request, but a demand dressed in the silks of affection. If you loved me, you would... A classic piece of emotional blackmail, as old and worn as a widow's shawl. The weightless man bows. He performs, he proves his love. But this man, he does nothing. He looks at her, not with anger, not with spite, but with a terrible, patient calm. And in that quiet humming space between her demand and his response, something breaks. He says, no. Just that. No, not no, because not I can't, I'm sorry. Just a single, solitary syllable. A word that is not a rejection of her, but a declaration of him. Ma. It is a border wall shooting up from the earth. On this side lies his sovereignty, his principles, his private torments, his sacred duties to himself. And he is telling her, without apology, that she is not welcome to trespass. Her reaction is predictable. First, disbelief, then rage. A storm of accusations. You are selfish, you are cruel, you do not love me. This is the tantrum of a goddess whose altar has just been spat upon. She is not reacting to his refusal. She is reacting to the sudden, shocking appearance of his gravity. For the first time, she has collided with him. She has felt his mass, his unyielding density. She has discovered that he is not a satellite, but a star in his own right, with his own celestial laws. This is what the great Swiss shaman, Carl Jung, understood in the deep, quiet corridors of the human psyche. He called it the anima projection. A woman, often unconsciously, projects the undeveloped, idealized masculine part of her own soul, her animus, onto the man she loves. She doesn't see him. She sees a vessel for her own heroic ideals, her own unlived ambitions, her own need for structure and authority. Her demands are not for him to be a better man, but for him to be a better actor in the theater of her soul. When he says no, he shatters the projection. He refuses the role. It is an act of profound, almost violent truth. He is, in effect, holding up a cracked mirror and forcing her to see that the God she was praying to was just her own reflection. The initial fury is the agony of that illusion dying. And then comes the reversal. After the storm, in the unsettling quiet, something else is born. Respect. It's a grudging thing at first, annoying, like a stone in her shoe. Why won't he just bend? But the stone remains, and slowly she begins to navigate around it. She begins to see the shape of it. She begins, for the first time, to see him as a separate landmass, with his own climate, his own treacherous mountains and hidden valleys. And a strange, terrifying curiosity blossoms. Who is this man truly? Who can withstand my weather? This is the birth of a more dangerous, more authentic love. A love that is not about filling a void, but about acknowledging one. A 2024 study on relational dynamics, a dry clinical affair of course, spoke of boundary integrity leading to heightened long-term attraction. They used sterile language to describe a blood-soaked truth. A fortress with no walls cannot be conquered, and therefore it cannot be truly desired. It is the friction, the resistance, the stark reality of the other that ignites the deepest, most enduring passions. It is the no that gives the yes, when it finally comes, its devastating power. There's an old whispered story from the misty peat bogs of the north of a silent giant called the Store. He was said to be carved from the mountain itself, and maidens would travel for weeks to ask for his boons, a good harvest, a faithful husband. They would arrive and lay their offerings at his feet, pleading and crying and singing his praises. The Store never moved. He never spoke. He just was. Most would leave in bitter frustration. But the few who stayed, who simply sat in his silent presence, asking for nothing, offering nothing but their own quiet company. To them, the legend says, the mountain would reveal its hidden veins of gold. It wasn't about pleasing the giant, it was about proving you could endure his silence, that you could exist in his presence without needing him to be anything other than what he was. So I ask you, a question not for the ether, but for the man staring back at you from the screen's dark reflection. Look at your life. Look at the compromises you've made, the principles you've swallowed, the little pieces of your soul you've bartered away for a moment of peace or a crumb of affection. Who are you when you strip away every yes you've ever uttered out of fear? What is left when you stop performing? Dare to find out. Dare to utter that small cataclysmic word. The silence that follows is the sound of your own gravity finally taking hold. It is the beginning of everything. We surrender our individual paths, our solitary musings, the quiet corners of our hearts where our truest selves reside. Think of the language of love. We are perfect for each other. We are soulmates. We can't live without each other. These phrases, while seemingly romantic, carry the insidious suggestion of dependence, of a lack of wholeness outside the context of the relationship. We begin to define ourselves through the lens of us, our identities becoming inextricably linked to the other person. Our hobbies become shared activities, our friends become mutual acquaintances, our dreams become collective aspirations. And slowly, imperceptibly, the I begins to fade, like an old photograph left out in the sun. There's a haunting Japanese legend of the Yuki-onna, the snow woman. But what happens when the performance ends? When the lights dim and the audience disperses? You are left alone in the echoing theater of your own soul, still wearing the costume, still reciting the lines, but the applause is gone. And in that stark silence, the phantom limb begins to throb with a dull, persistent ache. You realize that the approval you chased was never truly yours. It was borrowed, fleeting, conditional. It was a reflection of her desires, not a recognition of your worth. We too can become lost in the alluring embrace of us, sacrificing the warmth of our own inner fire for the fleeting illusion of shared comfort. We silence our dissenting opinions for fear of disrupting the harmony. We abandon our personal goals to accommodate hers. We mold ourselves into the shape we believe will best fit the us we are trying to create. And in doing so, we risk becoming mere shadows of our former selves, hollow vessels filled with the borrowed desires of another. But the wish comes at a terrible price. They will forever crave the touch of the catfish again, their lives becoming a desperate, unending search for that fleeting, cold, and ultimately empty sensation. Their joys become muted, their achievements meaningless unless acknowledged by the silent, blind creature. We become these creatures, forever seeking the ghostly touch of external validation. We achieve a promotion, not for the satisfaction of accomplishment, but to see the flicker of pride in her eyes. We cultivate an interest, not for the joy it brings us, but to impress her with our depth and sophistication. We silence our own truths, our own desires, for fear of her disapproval, becoming pale imitations of the men we were meant to be. And what is the ultimate irony? The very approval we so desperately seek often proves to be a fragile, fickle thing. It can be withdrawn on a whim, replaced by criticism or indifference. We become slaves to its capricious nature, forever walking on eggshells, terrified of shattering the delicate illusion of acceptance. Think of the men you know, perhaps even the man you see in the mirror, who have bent themselves backwards, contorted their very beings to please a woman. Did it earn them lasting love? Or did it breed a quiet contempt, a sense that they were easily manipulated, lacking the very core of self that demands respect? As Nietzsche so brutally observed, that which does not kill us makes us stronger. The more we seek approval from others, the less connected we become to our own inner compass, our own inherent sense of value. We become untethered, adrift in a sea of external opinions, forever searching for an anchor that lies within ourselves. So let me ask you, in the quiet darkness, what would you do? What would you create? What truth would you speak if you knew that no one was watching? If the phantom limb of approval ceased to ache, dare to imagine a life lived not for the gaze of another, but for the quiet satisfaction of your own soul. The applause of the world is a fleeting breeze. Your own heartbeat, however faint, is the steady drumbeat of your existence. Learn to listen to it. Cherish its rhythm. It is the only validation that truly matters. The more frantically you search for we, the further you stray from the singular truth of I. We are sold the romantic myth of completion, the idea that we are each a fractured half, destined to wander the world until we find our other half, the missing piece that will finally make us whole. It's a seductive fantasy, a balm for our inherent loneliness. And in the intoxicating early days of connection, it can feel almost real. Two worlds collide, boundaries blur, and for a fleeting, dizzying moment, I dissolves into we. But this merging, this beautiful fusion, it carries a hidden peril. For in the frantic search for us, we often lose sight of the singular, irreducible truth of I. We become so entangled in the labyrinth of shared desires, shared expectations, shared narratives, that we forget the unique contours of our own souls. We surrender our individual paths, our solitary musings, the quiet corners of our hearts where our truest selves reside. Think of the language of love. We are perfect for each other. We are soulmates. We can't live without each other. These phrases, while seemingly romantic, carry the insidious suggestion of dependence, of a lack of wholeness outside the context of the relationship. We begin to define ourselves through the lens of us, our identities becoming inextricably linked to the other person. Our hobbies become shared activities, our friends become mutual acquaintances, our dreams become collective aspirations. And slowly, imperceptibly, the I begins to fade, like an old photograph left out in the sun. There's a haunting Japanese legend of the Yuki-onna, the snow woman. She is said to be ethereally beautiful, but possesses a touch so cold it can freeze a man's soul. She often appears to travelers lost in the snowy mountains, luring them with her beauty and a promise of warmth. But those who succumb to her embrace find themselves trapped in an eternal winter, their individual spirits extinguished, becoming nothing more than a frozen echo in her icy realm. The desire for warmth and connection leads to the ultimate annihilation of self. We too can become lost in the alluring embrace of us, sacrificing the warmth of our own inner fire for the fleeting illusion of shared comfort. We silence our dissenting opinions for fear of disrupting the harmony. We abandon our personal goals to accommodate hers, We mold ourselves into the shape we believe will best fit the us we are trying to create. And in doing so, we risk becoming mere shadows of our former selves, hollow vessels filled with the borrowed desires of another. The bitter irony is that this desperate pursuit of we often leads to the very dissolution of the relationship we so crave. For what is a we comprised of, if not two, strong, independent, than eyes, choosing to walk alongside each other, each secure in their own footing? When one I dissolves into the other, the foundation becomes unstable. Resentment festers in the shadows of unmet needs and unexpressed desires. The lack of individual space breeds suffocation. The we that was so desperately sought becomes a cage. Consider the modern phenomenon of codependent relationships, meticulously documented in countless psychological studies, including a rather unsettling 2023 meta-analysis on the erosion of individual identity within long-term partnerships. These are unions built on a foundation of mutual neediness, where the boundaries between selves become blurred and porous. Each partner seeks validation and a sense of purpose through the other, creating a cycle of dependence that is both suffocating and ultimately unsustainable. The fear of being alone becomes so overwhelming that the individual self is sacrificed at the altar of us. But what is the alternative? It is not a cold, ghouly existence. It is the cultivation of a strong, resilient I, a self that is whole and complete in its own right, capable of offering love not from a place of neediness, but from a place of abundance. It is the understanding that true connection is not about merging into one, but about two distinct stars sharing the same patch of sky, each radiating their own unique light. So let me whisper this unsettling truth to you. The most profound act of love you can offer another is not the sacrifice of yourself, but the unwavering commitment to your own being. Tend to the garden of your own soul, cultivate your passions, honor your own truths, for it is only when you are whole that you can truly offer wholeness to another. Stop searching for your missing piece in someone else. You are not a fraction waiting to be completed. You are a universe unto yourself. Dare to explore its vastness. Dare to embrace your singularity. The we you seek will be richer, stronger, and far more real when it is built upon the unshakable foundation of two sovereign eyes. The ghosts you banish are the architects of the space where new life can take root. There is a strange alchemy in absence, a transformative power in letting go of what no longer serves us, no matter how tightly we once held it. The endings we fear, the departures that leave us feeling hollowed out, can paradoxically create the very space needed for something new, something more authentic, to emerge. We cling to dead branches, afraid to face the starkness of the winter tree, not realizing that it is the very shedding that allows for the vibrant bloom of spring. We are creatures of habit, bound by the familiar, even when that familiarity is a source of pain. We stay in relationships long after the life has drained out of them, clinging to the ghost of what once was, terrified of the unknown that lies beyond the exit door. We tolerate demands that chip away at our souls, fearing the loneliness that might come with asserting our boundaries. We chase after affections that are clearly not ours to claim, mistaking persistence for passion and denial for hope. But the universe, in its cold, indifferent wisdom, has a way of creating space. Sometimes it is a gentle nudge, a whisper of discontent that grows louder over time. Other times it is a brutal severing, a sudden shock that forces us to confront the void. Whether it is a relationship that ends, a dream that shatters, or an expectation that crumbles to dust, the initial experience is often one of profound loss. We feel as though a part of us has been ripped away, leaving behind a raw, aching wound. There's a somber Irish folktale of the Banshee's cry. It is said that this wailing spirit foretells a death, a great loss for the family who hears it. The sound is terrifying. a lament that chills the very bones. But the tale also whispers that the banshee's cry, while heralding an ending, also clears the way for the next chapter. It is a release of grief, a cleansing of the old, making room for the new cycle of life to begin. The terror lies not just in the loss, but in the necessary emptiness that follows. We too must learn to listen to the cries of our own internal banshees. Those unsettling feelings of dissatisfaction, the nagging sense that something is fundamentally wrong. These are not signs of failure, but signals of a necessary ending, a call for the old to be released so that the new can enter. Consider the men who finally walk away from toxic relationships, the ones that demanded constant performance, constant appeasement, constant self-negation. The initial feeling is often one of disorientation, even guilt. They may find themselves haunted by the ghosts of the past, the echoes of her voice, the weight of her expectations. But as time passes, and the space created by her absence begins to fill, something remarkable happens. They begin to rediscover themselves. The passions they had buried beneath layers of obligation resurface. The dreams they had abandoned flicker back to life. The quiet strength that had been eroded by constant demands begins to rebuild. A 2024 study on post-relationship growth highlighted the phenomenon of self-expansion following the dissolution of unhealthy attachments. Individuals who had felt constricted and defined by the relationship experienced a renewed sense of autonomy and a greater exploration of their own identities and interests. The absence of the demanding partner created a fertile ground for personal growth. But this alchemy of absence requires courage. It requires us to face the discomfort of the void, to resist the urge to immediately fill it with something, anything, just to avoid the feeling of emptiness. It requires us to sit with our grief, to acknowledge our losses, and to allow the space to simply be, without the need for external validation or the performance of a role. Think of the desolate beauty of a barren landscape in winter. It may seem lifeless, empty, but beneath the frozen surface, the seeds of spring are already stirring. The absence of the old makes way for the potential of the new. We too must allow ourselves these periods of starkness, these winters of the soul, knowing that they are essential for the eventual blossoming. So let me ask you this unsettling riddle. What is born only in the space left by what has died? The answer, my friend, is life itself. Dare to embrace the endings in your life, the necessary absences. They are not punishments, but opportunities. They are not signs of failure, but the fertile ground where your truest self can finally take root and flourish. The ghosts you banish are not your enemies. They are the unwitting architects of your liberation. The heaviest chains are the invisible ones we forge ourselves in the desperate pursuit of an illusion. For too long, we have carried burdens that were never ours to bear. The weight of expectations, the demands of others, the relentless pursuit of an ideal that exists only in the shimmering mirage of our own yearning. We have allowed ourselves to be defined by what we are not, by what we lack, by the ever-shifting standards of a world that profits from our insecurity. And in this futile chase, we have shackled ourselves with invisible chains, binding our spirits and stifling the very essence of who we are. The final, perhaps the most painfully lucid truth is this: the liberation we seek will never be found in the arms of another or in the attainment of some external measure of success. It lies in the shedding of these self-imposed burdens, in the courageous act of refusing to carry the weight of illusions any longer. Think of the myths we internalize about masculinity, about love, about what it means to be a man in this strange and often brutal world. We are told to be strong, stoic, providers, protectors, always in control, always striving, always pleasing. We build elaborate facades to conceal our vulnerabilities, our fears, our doubts. We become performers in a play we never auditioned for, reciting lines that feel alien to our own tongues. And the weight of this performance, this constant need to project an image of invincibility, becomes a crushing burden. silently eroding our joy and our authenticity. There's a haunting Zen parable of a monk carrying a beautiful woman across a river. He had vowed never to touch a woman, but he saw that she needed help. After reaching the other side, he set her down and continued on his way. Hours later, his fellow monks were still berating him for breaking his vow. The first monk simply replied, "I put her down at the riverbank. Why are you still carrying her?" We too carry so many burdens long after they have served their purpose. We cling to past hurts, to resentments, to outdated beliefs about ourselves and the world. We shoulder the expectations of others, the guilt of past mistakes, the fear of future failures. Like the monks in the parable, we often fail to fangxia the weight, allowing it to define and constrict us long after the moment has passed. Consider the men who finally stopped chasing after the elusive ideal of the perfect partner, the one who will magically complete them and solve all their problems. They realize that this pursuit is often a distraction from the real work, the inner work of self-acceptance, self-love, and self-discovery. They stop trying to mold themselves into someone else's fantasy and begin to embrace their own imperfections, their own unique flaws and strengths. And in this act of radical self-acceptance, the heavy chains of expectation begin to loosen. A 2025 study on the psychology of self-compassion revealed the profound impact of treating oneself with kindness and understanding, particularly in the face of perceived failures or shortcomings. The researchers found that men who cultivated self-compassion experienced lower levels of anxiety and depression and a greater sense of overall well-being. The simple act of being kinder to oneself proved to be a powerful antidote to the burden of self-criticism. But this liberation is not a passive act. It requires conscious effort, a willingness to confront the illusions we have so carefully constructed. It demands that we question the narratives we have been told and the narratives we have told ourselves. It requires the courage to step out of the roles that no longer fit, even if it means facing the discomfort of the unknown. Look at your own life, honestly, brutally. What burdens are you still carrying? What expectations are you still striving to meet? Whose voice are you still trying to please? Dare to examine these invisible chains. Dare to ask yourself if they are truly serving you or if they are simply holding you captive. The path to liberation is not about finding someone else to carry your burdens. It is about the courageous act of setting them down yourself. It is about recognizing your own inherent worth, independent of external validation or the fulfillment of societal expectations. It is about embracing the strange and beautiful truth of your own singular existence, unburdened by the weight of illusion. So my final, unsettling challenge to you, the one I leave you with in the flickering light. What is the one heavy chain you will dare to break starting now? The answer you find in the silence that follows will be the first step towards your own hard-won liberation.